72 years ago, a small group of newspaper editors from 16 countries felt the need for a truly international organization that would fight for press freedom in the world that had just emerged from a brutal world war and was entering the Cold War, and so was born the IPI. Over these almost 7 decades, the IPI has protested curbs on freedoms of the press and has had immense success. Its membership spans over 120 countries today as it promotes free exchange of accurate and balanced news, safeguards the freedom of the press, and helps to improve practices of journalism worldwide. The India chapter of IPI has been active in promoting these principles and has been crusading against threats to press freedom from state and non-state actors. And to motivate media organizations and journalists, IPI India instituted an award for excellence in journalism in 2003. We are indebted to Honorable Mr. Justice Madan B, Lokur, former judge of the Supreme Court of India and chairman of IPI-India Award jury, for guiding the India chapter, and we welcome him with a bouquet of flowers. With us today is eminent journalist and author, Sir Tully, who has most graciously agreed to present the award, and we'd like to also welcome him with flowers. We also warmly welcome fellow International Press Institute Vienna, Mr. Philip Matthew, and the executive member, India chapter of IPI, the former editor-in-chief and CEO of PTI, Mr. N.K. Razdan. Flowers also go out to our award winners, and we begin with the winner of the IPI-India Award 2020. The joint winners of IPI-India Award 2021, Lakshmi, Subramanian and Bhanu, Prakash, Chandra of the week. Thank you very much, and a very warm welcome to everyone.
It's great to see a real and not a virtual audience. Thank you all for coming. The pandemic came in the way of holding this event last year. Today's function, therefore, is special because it combines the awards for 2020 and 2021. All of you have made a significant effort to join us here. We are deeply appreciative and extend a grateful welcome to you all. Justice Madan Lokur, Sir Tully, Mr. Philip Matthew, the award winners here, ladies and gentlemen. I feel honored to welcome you all to this function at which the IPI Awards for Excellence in Journalism are being presented. You already heard an outline of the International Press Institute, and these awards have been instituted by the India chapter of the IPI, Vienna-based global organization of editors, publishers, broadcasters, and media executives. The pandemic tragically deprived us in the IPI jury of the guidance of our distinguished chairman, Mr. Soli Sorabjee, last year. One of India's most illustrious jurists and a staunch supporter of the press freedom, Mr. Sorabjee guided the jury's deliberations with sagacity. He fell victim to COVID after the jury under his chairmanship had completed its deliberations for the selection of the award winner for 2020. We deeply mourn his loss. It's our privilege The awards will be presented by Sir Tully, an institution in journalism who has impressed generations of radio listeners, television viewers, and newspaper readers with his work in India for the BBC. He has reported with deep insight and sympathy the politics and society of this very complex country. He achieved excellence in journalism in his own distinguished career, and fittingly he is presenting these awards. A warm welcome to you, our own Tully Saab. Mr. Philip Matthew here is one of the leading lights of the media industry in India. Besides running the Malayalam Manorama Media Group, Mr. Matthew has served as chairman of the Press Trust of India, in which capacity he was my boss. But he was a good boss. He is the fourth Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, was a great success. It was after that Congress that IPI-India chapter decided to institute this award. A warm welcome to Mr. Matthew. I am also delighted to welcome another Mr. Matthew, Riyadh, where is he? Oh, he is in a part of there. He is a fellow member of the IPI India Executive Board and the awards jury. He has also been my boss in PTI as the chairman of the board. And he was also nice. Riyadh has taken an active interest in the IPI causes. The awards function has become an important annual event in India's journalistic calendar since 2003. Some of India's best and brightest journalists often invites trouble. Awards for excellence in journalism have an added importance. This evening's award winners are shining examples of independent public service journalism. Ritika Chopra's byline in the Indian Express is synonymous with high quality journalism. Winner of the 2020 award, Ritika has to her credit several outstanding stories from relatively less fancy beats such as the education and election commission. Her incisive reports on the differences among the election commissioners during the 2019 Lok Sabha polls on how to handle poll code violations by India's high and mighty deservedly won her the IPI award. Ritika has consistently shown that it is possible to practice independent journalism despite all the hurdles. Thank you for your journalism. Given for print and television journalism. In the print category, the winners for 2021 are correspondent Lakshmi Subramanian and for often that Indian journalists venture into global trouble spots. But these two journalists undertook a risky trip to war zones in Syria between ISIS, Kurds and the Syrian army to meet the widows and children of recruits from India. They chronicled their plight and courage. For television journalism, the award goes to NDTV reporter in Lucknow, Mariyam, Alavi, and anchor Sreenivasan Jain, who asks real questions. He's in the bad habit of asking questions. They investigated complaints of so-called love jihad registered by the UP police against Muslim men who had married Hindu women. They spoke to the couples, their families, members of political parties, and police officers to bring out that majority of the complaints were baseless and made for familial or societal reason. Excellent journalism again. To all of you, thank you once again for being here. Thank you.
Tully, Mr. Philip Matthew, Mr. M.K. Razdar, Mr. R. Prasanna, the award winners, Ms. Ritika Chopra, Ms. Lakshmi Subramanian, Mr. Bhanu Prakash Chandra, Mr. Sreenivasan, Jain and Mariyam, Alavi, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure and honor to be with everybody today for the IPI-India Award for Excellence in Journalism for 2020 and 2021. Unfortunately, we are all missing Mr. Soli Sorabjee, who chaired the jury for the 2020 awards. His passing away is a great loss to many of us who have been fortunate to have held his hand of friendship in a variety of activities, be it from among those in the legal fraternity, music lovers, particularly jazz, members of the press, and so many others. His thoughts and ideas continue to guide us, and I'm sure he is watching us from up there, savoring every moment of today's proceedings. May I be permitted to share a few thoughts on freedom of the press and what I perceive to be the role of journalists and media personnel in today's times, both in print media and audiovisual media. It is a matter of common knowledge that the press is under attack in many ways. Many journalists have been arrested and kept in prison for a considerable period of time for doing their work as journalists. Many others have had FIRs filed against them for the same reason. There are also instances of some journalists being politely asked to toe the line, as it were, by the management or else. There are some instances where the release of advertisements have been stopped or payments for advertisements have been delayed by the establishment, thereby crippling small newspapers. There is now a more recent instance of a television channel whose license has not been renewed on grounds of national security, without disclosing the material. The Kerala High Court has found against the media channel, which has now filed an appeal challenging the decision. This leaves freedom of the press, a fundamental right guaranteed by our Constitution. We need to think about this, and journalists need to stand up to protect their constitutional and fundamental rights, so that accusations of a gaudy media or a somewhat compromised media do not become descriptive of the print and audiovisual media across the country. They need to take inspiration from last year's Nobel Peace Prize winner, Mariyam, of journalists who was to disseminate news and inform us about events taking place in India and around the world. Newspapers carried useful information, which was very good for quiz competitions and general knowledge question papers. TV was boring, but came alive once a week for Chitrahar and later a Sunday movie. Undoubtedly, there were several significant exceptions as the years went by, thanks to alleged corruption-related scams springing up every now and then like a jack-in-the-box. We also had issues of governance at the cost of social justice. Collectively, these events led to investigative journalism becoming more than just a fly-by-night operation and gave an opportunity to journalists to provide a more positive contribution, resulting to an extent in better governance. These developments made me believe, and I still hold that view, that journalists have an extremely important role in our society, and it is for good reason that the Supreme Court read freedom of the press into our fundamental right to speech and expression. Have our journalists built upon the foundation laid by the Supreme Court, or have they once again begun to bend, if not crawl? But going forward, I believe that our journalists need to prioritize issues of human interest and concern, as also issues relating to governance through investigative journalism. Permit me to give a few examples. We are today faced with enormous challenges of human interest. All of us present here may not be directly affected by these challenges, but that does not mean we can ignore them. In the immediate past, we had to deal with issues of mass migration due to the lockdown following the COVID pandemic, and many migrants and others also are still feeling the effects of the aftermath, including education for children, unemployment for youth, and concerns of health for the elderly. In addition, we are also facing greater concerns relating, among others, to climate change and climate justice, as well as wars in different parts of the world. Maria Ressa said in an interview, "If you don't have facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust." Soon after the lockdown, all of us saw millions of Indians trudging their way home on foot or on a cycle or on overloaded tempos and trucks. However, the Supreme Court was informed by the government that no one was on the road at that time. Did we have the facts or did we not? Did we have the truth or did we not? To what extent did the information passed on to the Supreme Court and the people of India damage the trust in the government to tell the truth? A recent book by an eminent journalist provides us with a first-hand account of the truth, and I'm afraid it is not quite flattering. We also need to recognize how the lives of millions of children have been adversely impacted due to the COVID pandemic, not only in relation to the digital divide and loss of education, but also on their physical and mental well-being. Though many journalists have actually looked at and written about or documented these concerns, how many of them have done so with an eye on policy changes? Changes that will have a major impact on the future of our country. Similarly, issues faced by aspirational but unemployed youth are a matter of grave concern, but have they been adequately highlighted so as to make them a governance issue? There are several other adversely impacted sections of society, many of them marginalized, but I believe their stories are not being adequately told and we need a rethink on this subject. While many of us may not be directly impacted by these developments, surely as concerned citizens, we need to be aware of what is happening around us, not only in terms of news and reporting of events, but also in terms of matters of human interest and governance. Reporting on elections and trends are important, but as the 2020 Award for Excellence in Journalism tells us, so do the events that go on behind the electoral curtain. Among the 2021 awardees for excellence in journalism, today are two intrepid and enterprising journalists who have studied and documented the travails of those in camps in war-torn Syria. Their plight may not directly concern us, but it is a matter of human interest. And now, with the war in Ukraine and with thousands of our students caught in the crossfire, our interest becomes immediate and direct, more so with the unfortunate death of one of them. We need only recall how investigative journalists have stolen a march over some police investigations. But we need investigations into much larger issues concerning the country as a whole. There is a difference between investigative journalism and journalism concerning investigations. Please don't misunderstand my interest in investigating journalism as being related only to scams and scandals. Investigative journalism can play a positive role and highlight events that can lead to better governance and policy changes. For example, there are several scholars researching on various subjects of significance. There are scholars who have researched subjects pertaining to the plight of brick kiln workers and others who have researched on the rights and plight of children in various homes. These are social issues which require investigative journalism, not only from the point of view of exposing a scam, if any, but bringing to light the predicament of marginalized sections of our society so that there is an improvement in their life and they are given the dignity that the Constitution of India provides them with. I recall dealing with two issues based on well-researched newspaper articles while in the Supreme Court. One of them pertained to the plight of widows in Vrindavan and the life they lead. This was taken up as a public interest litigation, and thanks to the efforts of a socially committed secretary in the Women and Child Department of the government of Uttar Pradesh, tremendous changes were brought about and the life of many widows was transformed. Another newspaper article related to the plight of prisoners across jails in the country. and the impact of overcrowding. This too was treated as a public interest litigation on the request of a former Chief Justice of India and resulted in quite a few changes, including the setting up of under-trial review committees and a committee to introduce prison reforms. These instances are mentioned because newspaper articles can make a huge difference in the lives of people and bring about significant changes, not only in terms of policy, but also in terms of our awareness of the problems faced by different but disadvantaged sections of society. In other words, to use a social media term, journalists must contribute stories that go viral. In this background, we can also appreciate the important role of audiovisual media. It is often said that if television channels play up an event, it can result in changes in our society for the better. We need only to look back a few years to the India Against Corruption movement that was played up on television channels day in and day out. In the award for 2021, the jury considered a well-researched program on what is commonly called love jihad. We need many more such reports. What I would like to emphasize is the need for our journalists to step out of their rooms and studios and assess and report what is happening around us other than news and sundry events. They have a powerful communication tool in their hands and they must make full use of it for the betterment of society. And I believe that can be achieved only when all of us are better informed about life around us based on facts and truth, so that we can trust the word of a journalist and rid them of the tag of compromised or biased journalism. I would like to conclude by thanking the jury of Mr. N. Ravi, Mr. M.K. Rastan and Mr. Riyad Matthew for going through each and every submission in depth for the 2021 awards and making the very difficult task of selecting the award winners so much easier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Justice Lokur. Ladies and gentlemen, the cherished moment is here when the awards will be given out. If I could request Sir Tully to please step below. The late Soli Sorabjee had scrutinized the entries for the IPI-India Award for Excellence in Journalism 2020 and 2020 for her extensive report on the differences within the Election Commission of India on how to deal with VVIPs who allegedly violated the model code of conduct. Samantha Tully to present the 2020 IPI-India Award for Excellence in Journalism to the award. Yes, we have three components to the award. We have a trophy, a citation, and a cash component of 2 applicants. The most important part, the check.
It's an honor to be here and have been chosen for the IPI Award for Excellence in Journalism. Thank you, International Press Institute, jury, the organizers. I'm really chuffed. We're living in a time when it's becoming more challenging to report on institutions in India, as these are being shaped by a very strong sector. As official processes become opaque, investigating the controversial divide within the Election Commission during the Lok Sabha elections and staying ahead with every development on the story is very challenging. For me, the IPI recognition for these series of reports that raised crucial questions of independence and autonomy of a democratic institution reaffirms the irreplaceability of true-level reporting. Some of the biggest news breaks and investigations have come out of reporting a story inside out. This award is an important reminder that there is no way around pounding pavements, knocking on doors, winning trust, cultivating sources, scouring documents, and hours spent confirming and reconfirming facts of a story. I'm taking this opportunity to reiterate this basic principle of journalism because it's becoming increasingly difficult to live by it. I would also like to acknowledge all the invisible hands who have made this award possible today. I'm truly proud to be part of the Indian Express, one of the few independent media houses in this country. This newsroom keeps me grounded, always has my back, and relentlessly encourages me to look beyond the surface and investigate. A special thanks to my editors, Ravish Tiwari, Rajkamal Jha, Uni Rajakrishnan, and Vedinathan Iyer for the tough love and for helping me push past my limits. My friend Indulekha for helping me become a better writer. And most of all today, I would like to thank my family, my parents and my in-laws who are here with me today. Thank you for being my pillars of support and strength and for unquestioningly supporting all my choices.
We'd like to know the IPI jury headed by Honourable Mr. Justice Madan B. Lokur, and I'd like to request Sir Mark Tully to please present these awards. In the print category, the award goes jointly to Lakshmi Subramanian and Prakash, Chandra of the Week. Reports and photographs from the Syrian war zone on Indian widows and children trapped in the combat between ISIS and the Syrian army. We have Lakshmi Subramanian receiving the trophy, citation and a cash prize of 50,000 rupees. The trophy. And the check of 50,000. Congratulations. May I request Bhanu, Prakash, Chandra. Bhanu also gets a trophy, citation and a cash prize of 50,000 rupees. Thank you. We move to the television category. Jain and Mariyam Alavi of NDTV for their exclusive investigative reports on the false love jihad cases filed against interfaith couples in Uttar Pradesh. Each of them will receive a trophy, citation and a cash prize of 50,000 rupees. We've got Mariyam Alavi receiving the award. Sreenivasan. Rather heavy. so much, Tully. You can come up and take your seat up here. Congratulations to all the winners, and I'm sure that everyone is keen now to hear from them, so I'd like to invite each of them to say a few words. First, I'd like to invite Lakshmi.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Ravan, Mr. Martali, Justice Lokur, Mr. President, Chandra. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Julie. I feel very honored to receive this award from the IPI today, which is committed to safeguarding and upholding the freedom of the press. To receive an award from a panel of editors and senior journalists is really an encouragement. I thank the IPI jury, Justice Madan B, Lokur, and members of the jury for this recognition. I'm happy to receive this award from Tully, renowned and eminent journalist, whom people like me have always looked up at and take inspiration from. This hall actually is full of my seniors, my colleagues, and my editors. So many of you here are my inspiration. I have watched you from a distance and learned from you. I am overwhelmed. I want to thank my editors at this time, my management at the week, for having faith in me and encouraging me to travel to Syria and believing in me to make me travel very far from India to the war-torn northeast Syria. The very idea was a challenging assignment, more than the story itself. The travel and the people I met, the way Bhanu and I went around in the dry landscape where guns, shootouts and bombs were just another word, the way we struggled to get the paper visa and land in a country where I did not have even a single contact was a tough lesson I learned. Bhanu and I, of course, were the first set of Indian journalists to land in northeast Syria. The officials at the Syrian Democratic Forces told us that we are the first Indian journalists there, and they have never spoken to an Indian journalist. As you all know, as journalists, when we travel to such war zones during or after the war, we will definitely be watched. And I was no exception to it. Yes, I was watched by both the good and the bad guys. Here, by good guys, I mean the guys who are friendly with the government and with our own government, and who ensured that Bhanu and I came back home safe with the information and photos we wanted. And of course, the bad guys here are understood, and I need not mention about them, how they added more chapters to the lessons we learned, the life lessons we learned. And our visa process itself was a very very big task, only a paper visa, and that too on an invitation from a lawyer in Kurdistan, Iraq. It was another experience. Then we landed in Erbil, the challenge began. Passing through the immigration and getting into the beautiful city of Erbil was another huge task, ensuring we did not fall in the trap of both the good and the bad guys. So soon after we passed through the immigration, Bhanu and I decided that we should be prepared for any trouble that comes our way, because in the immigration section itself we spent around 6 hours. We were not allowed to get into Erbil, and we did not have phones, we did not have any contact there, we didn't know Arabic, we couldn't understand anything what the police and the immigration officers there were saying. So it was a lesson that we learned. So then we decided like we should have plan A, plan B and plan C wherever we go. The plan A was to meet people, get the information we wanted, get the pictures. The plan B was to, if there is any problem, be silent, don't talk, and then get the information, and even a bit of information that we wanted to get it. So after that, plan C was, wherever we are, if there is a problem, if we can't remain silent there, jump off the vehicle and run away. So we had 3 plans, and we scheduled it very tightly for 8 days. We did not want to miss even a minute without getting information. So we traveled through Syria, northeast Syria, the entire country for 8 days, and then we came back to the Kurdistan border, that's again to Erbil. And even that one day we spent in Erbil after coming back from Syria was another day which we ensured that we should not again fall in the trap of the good and the bad guys. So my story is about the Indian ISIS widows at the sprawling Al-Hol refugee camp in northeast Syria. No wonder in any armed conflict, the worst affected are the women and the children. This I understood there it was very evident. when we went to the Alavi camp. It was a sprawling camp, and more than 70,000 women with their children are in the refugee camp. And I believe it is the biggest refugee camps in the world. And the story of Fatima Hussain, who landed in Syria from Bombay, is told by us in this article. Fatima is just one example. I have also told the story of ISIS prisoners in Al-Asaka jail, who wore religion on their sleeves only to land in the conflict zone and then spend their lifetime in jail. This IPI award to me is truly an encouragement for me to produce more and more world-exclusive articles like this. And let me say, I'm very proud for what the week stands for: journalism with a human touch. In these trying times when journalism is facing many hardships, I'm proud to be associated with the week and bring humanity in every report of mine. And I too believe that as a journalist, my job is to tell stories as accurately and truthfully as possible. Thank you, my editors, my management for having me and encouraging me. Thank you, IPI jury, for the award. My heartfelt thanks to Bhanu for traveling with me to Syria, not just as a photojournalist, but also as my friend, my guide, and we were together everywhere where we went. And my husband Subbu, who had always stood by me where I took challenging assignments. Thank you again.
I address such a gathering because I always been behind the lens. So pardon me if there is any mistake. I want to thank one person who actually made me what I am today. That is my editor, Chandra, who is probably in the crowd here. Yeah, I will tell you why. I am from a rural background in Chikmagalur, that's Karnataka. I studied in Kannada medium. When I joined the week, it encouraged me to write in English and see the world in a different angle. So I want to thank him first before I'm going to get into the serious story. This is actually Lakshmi's idea to go to Syria, northeastern Syria, and explore the life, particularly of women. She was talking about only Indian women, but this story also touches YPJ, these women fighters who actually sent a lot of ISIS terrorists to the hell. They probably say that I sent 7 to the hell and all. Because according to Islam, if you are killed by a man, you go to hell. Killed by a woman, you go to hell. So they were probably telling that I killed so many ISIS terrorists. Second thing is Yazidi slaves, women who suffered kidnapping and kept as sex slaves. So this story also touches that. And I also thank my editors and publisher and Riya sir for believing in me. And also Justice Lokur was telling how journalism is becoming dangerous. As a photojournalist, we are the first to get hit when something goes wrong. The day by day journalism is not just becoming difficult, it is also dangerous. So we are the first to get hit. So I wish we gather courage and continue to do our stories. Thank you so much.
Congratulations again to Lakshmi and to Bhanu. I'd like to now request Mariyam, please come
Thank you, IPI India, for my first journalism award. And it will always be a matter of great pride and honor for me that I got to receive it from the great Sir Tully and in the presence of Justice Madan Lokur, Mr. Prasannan, Mr. Philip Matthews, and Mr. M.K. Razdan. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing what Dr. Pranoy Roy has often called serious journalism. With all due respects to Dr. Roy, I would like to take this opportunity to share the story of when I first used the expression, without even actually realizing the connotations of what I was actually saying. Back in 2010, when my mother first told my grandmother that I was going to study and pursue a career in journalism, her immediate response was, "Ayyo, does that mean she's going to chase people down with a mic and shout in their faces?" And I responded with the confidence and arrogance that only an 18-year-old could muster, complete with an eye roll, and said, please, I'll be doing serious journalism. Thinking back, my grandmother, who was over 60 at the time, who was from a small town in Kerala, whose only understanding of the media and journalism was based on what she saw on her screen every day, she probably saw something about the direction that the Indian media was taking. I, however, took a couple more years. By the time I graduated in 2013, I saw the space for this serious journalism, particularly in the broadcast media, shrink right before my eyes. There was little differentiation between noise and news. I saw investigative journalism and ground reporting being increasingly replaced by shouting matches that were being passed off as debates. What's worse is that I saw my classmates emulate the style in our classrooms when we held mock discussion shows. The student playing the anchor would often shout and interrupt the panelists, including yours truly. And the students playing the panelists would often go on rants without giving the other person an opportunity to speak. We all thought of it as slightly comical, and we would often break character and giggle in between. But the sad truth was, I think we all probably thought that this was going to be our future in journalism. So when I finally started working almost half a decade later and 2 postgraduate degrees later, I was worried about the state of the Indian media, about my own prospects, about the kind of stories I would get to do. But thankfully, be it during my time at Hindustan Times in the beginning or at NDTV now, I was able to pursue the kind of reportage I aspired to. But great stories do not happen in a vacuum. There's Mr. Sreenivasan Jain, who quickly moved from my boss to my mentor to my friend. It was with his help and guidance that I've been able to do the stories at NDTV that I can truly be proud of, including the one that's being recognized today, our investigation into the bogey of love jihad. Xavier Thomas, Xavier sir, our camera person, who not only captured the visuals that brought the story to life, but was also my sounding board and my personal therapist throughout the journey. Our producer, Yamini Joshi, who's here, who's truly the captain of our ship, our output and video editors, each and every member of the NDTV team. None of the stories we do would be possible without them. So today, even after my initial cynicism, I think I found enough reasons to be hopeful. Yes, there is no denying that serious journalism has been sacrificed at the altar of sensationalism and biases. But there are still media organizations and journalists holding on, sometimes at great professional and personal costs. This gives me hope. The work we do at NDTV gives me hope. The other winners here, be it the stellar reporting by Ritika, Chopra on the Election Commission, or Lakshmi, Subramanian and Bhanu, Prakash, Chandra, your stories from Syria and Iraq, you give me hope, your work gives me hope. And that there are still publications and media organizations that are willing to publish stories that matter gives me hope. And IPI-India that acknowledge and reward serious journalism, that gives me hope. So on that hopeful note, I would once again like to thank IPI-India and the members of the jury for this great honor, and the other winners here, congratulations, but also thank you for the work you do.
Thank you, IPI jury and all its members for this recognition. I am actually just here as a sort of cheerleader for my colleague Mariyam and her reporting. And of course, as Mariyam mentioned, the incredible team that works on our show and often doesn't get the kind of recognition. Yamini, she mentioned our producer, Xavier Thomas, camera person. This is not the sort of false modesty that you typically hear from grey non-eminences at gatherings like this. This is just simply a statement of fact that it was actually the award recognizing Mariyam's terrific investigative work exposing this falsehood of love jihad. Not just the falsehood of love jihad, but also the attempts by the state to try and give it a legal apparatus, a legal legitimacy by criminalizing interfaith relationships. Now, The problem currently that we're facing is that these kinds of pernicious ideas like love jihad have been around for a very long time. But they have largely remained in the dark corners of the right-wing Sangh Parivar fringe. That is now dramatically changed. These ideas and these conspiracy theories have been completely mainstream. And that's in a large part because they're being amplified relentlessly by the ruling establishment and by the Indian state, which now, as we're seeing across the country, is creating a vast legal and legislative framework to try and, in a sense, institutionalize the criminalization of interfaith relationships without a shred of evidence. So this slow toxic drip has actually become a tsunami. And we find ourselves every other day trying to push back against it. But it's literally like there's a flood and you're pushing it back with the palm of your hand. So by recognizing our reporting and by giving us this award, you're actually strengthening our hands. And you're strengthening the hands of all the other incredible journalists who are trying to tilt against the storm, like the terrific journalists that have been recognized today, and many others who are doing fantastic work. So thank you for that. And for allowing us the space to do what we do every day, but because in a way, you are actually used to being in that oxygen tank that newsrooms like NDTV provide, that you actually begin to take it for granted. But this is an award that belongs to them as much as it does to us. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Tully to please address the august guest.
I did the last one, and you have heard a lot about journalism. You've had very courageous journalists speaking, and you've had a very learned and interesting and very important speech on what journalism is all about, a suggestion for what the media should be doing. So what is left for me to do, really, or to say? I have some words jotted down here, but I start speaking with great reluctance, having heard what I have just heard. The problem of journalism today is very obvious, and it has been very lucidly spelled out by the first speaker. So there's no need for me to repeat all that has been said. I'm going to say something slightly different to that, though. I read frequently statements saying things like the press is under the similar to what it was under the emergency. Well, I happen to have been thrown out of India because of the emergency, so I remember that well, and I remember the fact that there was no journalism at all, effectively. Papers were printing space, leaving space as a symbol of the fact that they were not able to report any news. A senior journalist like Kuldeep Nair was arrested, and the press was completely blanked out. Well, that's not happening now. And I think it's very important nowadays that we realize the extent to which the press, by the press I mean the whole media is facing problem, and that we expose the problems the media is facing as well. But at the same time, I think we want to realize that India is still India. Research journalism is still possible. The whole of the news is not completely blacked out. What we have to do as the public, and I count myself as one of the public, is to sort out the journalism which we're receiving, find those people who we trust and follow them. And there are many of them, excellent people as well. And they're the people, most important people at present, are the people that we know we can trust. Now, if we look at what is happening at the very moment while we sit here, the bombing of Ukraine, and if you look at what the Russians are doing, and if you were there looking at your television or listening to your radio or reading your newspaper a few days ago, you would have read shock and horror stories to that extent, to keep the media alive and to ensure that there are some organizations, some journalists who are not goated journalists, not journalists sitting in the lap of the government. There are plenty of those, but we have to accept the fact that there are plenty of those. But as I said, we have to look to those who are not in the lap of the government, to follow them, to get our news, and to get our, to enable us to make up our own minds about what we should do, what we should be doing. They are the people. As far as journalism itself goes, well, one thing only, one thought I would like to leave with you, and that is I believe very strongly in the importance of balance. Now that doesn't mean that you can't go out and do a very strong story. That doesn't mean that any of the prize winners here were wrong in the journalism they did. They were not wrong. They did courageous journalism. They had top-class judges who have judged them and found that they are worthy of winning an award. And the whole machinery of journalism at its best has functioned very well. But even they should, I think, realize the importance of balance. And we, the general public, the readers, should realize the importance of balance. And what is the importance of balance? The importance of balance, the crucial thing about balance, is that you don't go too far, and that you listen to the opposite side in your story, and that the organization you're working for encourages you to do that, allows you to do that, and even, I would say, insists that you do that. And this is something which, there are circumstances where there is no balance. The story is so appalling, and there's no doubt about that. But again, if we get into this lack of balanced mind, either as journalists or as a public, we then end up being totally opposed to the government, or totally opposed to the government's enemies, depending which side you take. And you render not only yourself as a journalist, but journalism in general, and also, of course, your institution and the person or the institution that you have allowed yourself to malign.
I'd like to now request Mr. R. Prasannan, Senior Member of the IPI-India Core Team, to please propose the vote of thanks.
Honorable Justice Madan Lokur, Sir Tully, Mr. Philip Matthew, Mr. M.K. Razdan. Today's award is Ritika, Chopra, Sreenivasan, Jain, Mariyam, Alavi, Lakshmi, Subramanian, and Bhanu, Prakash, Chandra. Friends, colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. It's evidently a lot of bad news that we all have gathered here today. There's a war going on in Ukraine from where millions are fleeing, and some of our own fellow citizens are trapped there. Not just Ukraine and the neighborhood, but the entire Europe, Russia, and the world are in turmoil. Sitting here, we can only hope that saner counsel will prevail on all. Please saying congratulations and a big thank you to Ritika, Chopra, Sreenivasan, Jain, Mariyam, Alavi, and my colleagues Lakshmi, Subramanian, and Bhanu, Prakash, Chandra. Thank you for coming over here to receive the award, that too in an evening hour, which is the busiest for any journalist. Thank you.
Sir, you also come. Thank you. I'll take your photo. Ritika.
So please go and enjoy the tea. Photo हो गई family.
फोटो ही तो तब से कर
Yes.
I work for a group in it's basically a French
French. Oh, that's They're not able to transform what's happening.
बहुत बहुत थैंक यू मैम कि आप जो है अवार्ड फंक्शन में आई यहाँ पे आपने अपनी शिद्दत दी। कैसा लगा मैम जी, कैसा है? बहुत ही अच्छी है इस तरह से।
यहाँ तो जरूर आना है।
हाँ, यहाँ निर्भीकता के लिए जो
उसको बढ़ावा देने के लिए आना चाहिए।
हाँ जी जी, थैंक यू मैम जी, रिगार्ड मैम। Many thanks, lots of thanks. Thank you very much.